Hello and welcome to Chapter 11. Now I'm going to go ahead and tell you first off as a reminder that these particular lectures are highlights of the chapters and are not a replacement for reading your textbook, especially chapters 11 and 12, because these chapters focus the most on how to actually structure your presentation, the order of your main points, how you connect your ideas, where you get started, how you finish, all that good information. So I'm just going to encourage you to take a few moments and get serious about these next couple of chapters, because I hope I can get them done in under 20 minutes apiece, but the odds of that are a little remote depending on the content. So first things first, hopefully by now you have reviewed Chapter 13, which was your basic introduction to informative speaking. So it was we're giving a speech, it's going to be informing our audiences, and if you haven't by now, please go through your syllabus and read the description of the informative speech project. So the time limits, resource requirements, tips and tricks, the pieces for your outline, and for your self and peer evaluations. Just familiarize yourself with the unit requirements as a whole. Now, that said, we're going to go ahead and move on, and this is very similar to what we did with the beginning of Chapter 13, and I wanted you to take a few minutes again to talk to me about how you feel about presenting information in front of people. Now, you are, in this particular course, not required to have an audience in front of you. Ignore my computer. You are not required to have an audience in front of you, but I recommend that you do, just to practice and control your communication skill set there. If you are nervous about presenting in front of people, the best thing that you can possibly do is to present in front of people, because that's how you are going to kind of acclimatize yourself to it, get used to being in front of people and how to make eye contact and engage them. You also need the skill of engaging a webcam as well. So if you choose not to have an audience, you do need to make sure that you are making contact with the webcam itself and not the screen, because you all can tell when I'm looking at what my screen has in front of me versus when I'm looking at the webcam and connecting technically with you. So one of these skill sets that we want to practice in these online courses is your ability to maintain eye contact with the camera and to still have an active voice and facial set even though you don't see, quote unquote, anyone. This is an exceptionally important skill in our globally based communication economy nowadays, where we will do a significant amount of communicating to technology and not necessarily face-to-face communications with people. So taking that information, sit back and relax for a moment and self-evaluate how you feel about presenting in front of people versus presenting in front of technology. Which one's easier? Which one's harder? Which one do you want to kind of work on the most? And once you've given yourself a direction, we will move forward. So to get into this particular topic, we have already discussed what would be something you want to talk about. We did that in Chapter 13. So I want to address what public speaking is. Public speaking defined is effectively face-to-face communication, and our university defines that as having an audience of 5 or more people watching you simultaneously while you give your presentation. In this class, again, I do not require an audience because I still want you to work on your web-based skills and your eye contact with the webcam. But generally, there will be more than 5 people for public speaking. That's just the bare minimum. So an audience is required, and your communication is continuous. This means that you are going to get up there, start talking, and keep on talking until you're done talking. There's no start, stop, wait for a question, answer question, start again. It is a continuous flow from beginning to end. So every element of that particular communication has to be prepared in advance and linked to the previous pieces and to the next pieces so that it can come in one stream of communication. Now, another thing to keep in mind would be most humans are typically nervous about communication in general, but there is a difference between communication apprehension and public speaking anxiety. Communication apprehension is more similar to social anxiety, when just generally communicating with other people involves some level of anxiety, anxious feeling, or apprehension, which means kind of a minor fear, is when we are uncomfortable with the communication situation. That could be something like, let's say you're ordering something to eat in a fast food restaurant, and the fact that you're going to have to order makes you have a mild panic at trying to figure out what you want to eat. So that's kind of communication apprehension. Public speaking anxiety is when there is a very focused anxiety feeling about being up in front of people, presenting that continuous flow of communication. So public speaking anxiety is about being on your feet in front of people, and it is about the anxiety and nervousness or extreme fear that could come with that. So communication apprehension is more generalized towards any communication situation and is just general discomfort. And public speaking anxiety is much more intense. It is severe, it is powerful, and it is focused on being in front of and evaluated by a group of people. So, my question would be, how do you feel when you think about public speaking? Think about the journal entry you just did a second ago about assessing what about this presentation makes you feel nervous. How do you feel when you think about public speaking? Are you good? Bad? Terrified? Comfortable? Just be honest. If you're uncomfortable, find a way to conquer that fear. And I don't mean that as simply as it sounds. I mean, make a conscious decision to encounter those situations until that anxiety reduces. If you are very comfortable with public speaking, what would be something that would make you uncomfortable? What would knock you off of your typical routine? What could make it difficult? What would you be uncertain about coming back from? How would you handle that situation? One of the things that we do to reduce anxiety is to just do it. I hate saying something that abrupt, but it is the truth. If you want to get used to something, you kind of have to do it a lot. If you want to learn how to play an instrument, you probably have to play it pretty often. If you want to get better at a video game, you're going to have to invest some time there. If you want to reduce anxiety with public speaking, you're going to have to put yourself in situations where you realize you will survive that fear. It might be uncomfortable. It could be hugely uncomfortable, but you can and you will survive it. And that is what you want to learn. Because once your body understands that you will survive the experience, it reduces those adrenaline rushes that you get. Another thing that we can do to reduce anxiety is just to be positive about it. If you have an internal dialogue saying that it's going to be awful and terrible and you're never going to get it done and da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da, you are going to reduce your ability to do well. If you say, okay, this is not going to be fun, but I'm going to make it through, you tend to do better. Be real. You probably won't be perfect. I've given very few perfect grades out in my life, and I don't even think then the speeches were perfect. They just did everything I asked them to do. So be honest with yourself that you will probably stumble. You will probably say or You might forget to cite something, but it's okay. You will get there. Think of your tone of voice being something conversational. I want you to have the same level of energy and emotional engagement in a speech as you would talking about something you love with a person you're comfortable being around. I want you to think of something that you're very passionate about, something that really lights your face up and makes your body language come alive because you can't wait to communicate this to somebody. And think about what happens to your eyes, your eyebrows, your mouth, your hands. You're really animated and in it. And I want you to bring that energy to your presentation. Because we have, I'm sure, all seen people that will stand up there and monotone read something to us, and we just want it to be over. If you're engaged and excited and animated and passionate, even if you're faking all of that, everyone's going to want to listen and want to learn from you. So fake it, even if you don't have it with you yet. Make sure your focus is on your audience's need to learn and not on your own fear. If you're focusing on getting information to your audience that they need to pay attention to, it helps because it takes that self-focus out and puts it to your audience. And whenever we help others, we feel better. It reduces our stress. Be prepared. Know what you're doing. Welcome to these screencasts. As best you can, please don't stand still. Skype is a really good technology because typically with the webcams, if you move, it will move. Some other ones won't do that, but Skype as a service, generally the camera will track you as you move, so that's a good thing to use. There are some other technologies you can program your phone or laptop or webcam to use to track you. I want you to move simply because if you stand still, that increases anxiety and decreases interest level. The only reason I'm sitting still for these screencasts is because they are significantly longer and that these are used for informational purposes. These are not speeches, they are lectures, so they actually are different. The more you move, the better you feel. All right. So this chapter and the next one are going to go through multiple steps of public speaking. So for the rest of this chapter is going to focus on the first few steps of the process. I'm going to click through them relatively speedily. You will have to go to your textbook for more information on these steps because, again, I'm highlighting, not full on going through every item here. So the first step is to figure out what your topic, your purpose, and your thesis are going to be. So what you want to do is kind of start off with a brainstorming process. And a brainstorming process means you write down everything that comes into your mind, whether or not you think you're going to use that information for your actual speech. So if I don't know what I'm going to give a speech on, I literally just start by writing whatever I'm thinking about. So cats, food, time, webcam, name, place, speech, anxiety, comfort, stuffed animal, Cinderella, whatever it might be. I just start writing out these ideas, and eventually it kind of opens up and wakes up a part of your brain. Your brain starts going, okay, here about these ideas, and how about this idea, and how about this one, and your list gets more and more focused until you eventually come up with that aha moment and go, that's what I'm going to use. Now, you can shortcut this and just Google speech topics, but the ones that you're going to hit are the ones that are typically the most used and are pretty boring. So I prefer for you to use the brainstorming method because that will help you come up with a topic that is personal to you. So once you've brainstormed for a minute and try to figure out a list of potential topics, you can kind of ask yourself these questions, what am I interested in? Have I made a list? Is it simple and easy to address? And then once you've picked which one you think is good, you write out your purpose. And your purpose is essentially what you're here to do. And for this first speech, your general purpose is to inform. It is to give us information. After you have a general purpose, you have a specific one, so makes it more direct. And your specific purpose is when you decide what you're going to inform your audience about specifically. So it would be to inform my audience about, and then insert your topic there. So it could be, my general purpose is to inform. That's it. My specific purpose is to inform my audience about the domestic American short-hair feline. There you go. Just put your topic in that little blank and you'll be okay. So once you have your topic, check. General and specific purposes, check. You move on to your thesis. And the best way to think about your thesis is essentially, if your audience forgets everything about you and your presentation, they should remember one element, and that element would be your thesis statement. What one piece of the whole speech do you want us to walk away knowing? And it's essentially that one sentence summary of the biggest purpose, the biggest overall overarching idea of your presentation. If I know nothing else, I know this. What do I know? So for me, it might be the habits and personality of the domestic American short-hair feline. I want you to know what it's like and what its personality is like. There you go. That's all you got to know. So again, don't overcomplicate it. So some examples of thesis statements. You can have a lead-in where you say something like, I am here to talk to you about the importance of insert topic. You can say it's imperative that we discuss insert topic, or you can just state what you want. If my whole speech is about cats and I'm going to sit here and go, cats are amazing animals, period, bam, walk away knowing that. Don't overthink it, and realize that thesis statements in speech are different from thesis statements in English or literature classes. In literature, your thesis typically has your central idea and then like a preview of your main points. It kind of overviews the whole paper in one sentence. In speech writing, we separate those elements. So a thesis should be a very simple statement of what we're here to do. And the other element is something known as a preview, and that is where you mention your three main points, and I'm going to get to that in the next chapter lecture. So separate it out. If your thesis has all of your main points in it, you're going to have to stop for a moment and separate those as two distinct ideals. And again, I'll get to that in another lecture, so we're moving on. Pause if you'd like to draft out your own thesis just to get something checked off the list. Step 2 is to analyze your audience. As I mentioned a lot in chapter 13, it's all about what your audience does and does not know. So you should always focus on them and what they need to know about your particular topic. Are they particularly willing to listen to you? We have to do peer evaluations in this class, so we're kind of forced to listen to at least one of you. But if you decide to present in front of an audience to gain more public speaking experience, how willing would they be to listen to your topic? Is it something interesting to them? Engaging? New? Boring? Old? Do they know anything about the topic already? Again, I've mentioned it before, you don't want to bore your audience to death with information that they already know. So you might have to connect what they already know with what you want them to know, but you don't want to give a speech that just contains facts and figures that the average person would already know. I had a student who gave a presentation on horseback riding once, probably 8-9 years ago, and she gave a presentation on what a horse was and what a saddle was, and the audience didn't gain much from it because they knew what horses were and they knew what saddles were. What we might not have known is that there are a couple of different types of saddles and that there are multiple different forms of horseback riding and the different activities and sporting events they take a part of. So something you might want to do is to kind of brainstorm what the average person would already know and then take it a step further and add to that. So, okay, they probably already know this, so I'm going to talk to them about this instead. So that way you spend your time where it's best used. If you have the luxury of knowing your audience, it's good to jot down what you do know about them. This could be age, sex, race, personal interests. Are these your family or friends? Are these classmates? Do you know your classmates? Have you had other classes together, or are you in a cohort together? Assess that and when possible. Be able to adapt. All great comedians have the ability to adapt to the needs of their audiences. So all great speakers can do the same thing. If what you're doing isn't working, change it. Speak directly to your audience. Don't just read a piece of paper to us. Look at us. Connect with us. Point your finger at us and connect the information to what we need to know. When possible, research your demographics. Again, take a moment. Try to brainstorm out what you think you know about your viewing audience. Step 3, you actually start researching your topic. And something I want you to emphasize here is, do you notice we haven't figured out all of our main points or anything yet? You might have done that for a previous assignment for me, but as far as your textbook is concerned, it wants you to find research before you formally establish your main points. So even if you have brainstormed out for me in a previous assignment your topic and your main points, this is a time where you kind of go back and reevaluate and decide whether or not those main points are still viable. You should typically go through multiple drafts of ideas before you hit your final one. So if you start researching your topic and realize that the research doesn't fit your main points are what goes, not the research. So begin with what you know, use reliable information. There will be a screencast about how to use the ETSU library resources to your advantage, so that will be there for you to help you identify reliable information. And probably the biggest thing you're going to get tired of me saying is that you do have to cite your sources, and the Department of Communication and Performance requires that you cite those with author, title, and year. And if you'll notice the word that is in bold, orally. This means it has to come out of your face. I have to hear the words author, title, and year. I need to hear, according to Smith, who wrote How to Fish in 2013. If I don't hear it, you don't get credit for it. Doesn't matter if it's in your outline or if you have gorgeous citations in your outline, which are required, point B there. If I don't hear it, you don't get credit for it. So you might have a perfect outline score because everything's there, but if I don't hear it during your speech when the information is relevant, then you do not get credit. 0. So be careful. Where appropriate, have supporting materials. I've already gone over each one of these in chapter 13, so I'm not going to spend any amount of time here. I will just remind you to cite sources when they are appropriate. If you borrow a picture from Google Images, cite it. If you have statistics from a really cool newspaper article, cite them. If you find a definition from Merriam-Webster online, cite it. Okay? If you use someone else's personal example, give them credit. So whatever you use to support yourself, you had best to give credit where credit is due. Again, according to author, who wrote, title, in year. If you're missing any of these pieces of information, there's also an extra credit option for you where you'll go through a PowerPoint that explains what to do when pieces of information are missing, and there will be a quiz that you can do to earn extra credit. So, step 5, now we get into our main points. Remember, we've got our research and supporting materials. Now we're going to organize those into larger categories. So your main ideas, on average you should have 3, are the big ideas that are going to explain and link to your thesis statement. So if I'm trying to prove to you that cats are amazing animals, and I'm trying to inform you on why they are amazing, then what do I need to say? Do I need to talk about their versatility, their personality, how inexpensive they are to maintain, companionship? What am I talking about, okay? So I would need to decide what would be the 3 biggest ideas that would communicate effectively to my audience why I think cats are amazing. Why are they worth my time? If you have another topic, for example, I referenced, I think, diabetes in chapter 13, and if I was informing my audience about diabetes, what would be the 3 largest concepts my audience needs to understand about diabetes in order to be appropriately informed? So, same thing like you did with topics. You sit there and brainstorm. I use something called concept mapping, where I'll just get a big piece of paper, or if a classroom's available, a dry erase board, and I will put my topic in the center of the whiteboard or piece of paper, and it'll say something like cats, okay? And then I'm going to start brainstorming my ideas, like I just mentioned earlier. Cost, write that up here. Companionship, write that over here. Breeds, over here. Time, over here. Entertainment, personalities, anything else I can think of. And then I start linking, I draw my little connections from circle to circle if ideas connect with each other. Like under personality, there could be 4 or 5 little subpoints that might be worthwhile. Or I might decide that breed has nothing to do with whether cats are amazing or not, so I get rid of that one. If I'm talking about cost of upkeep, then I might have details about the cost of food, living arrangements. I might link time in there because they don't require as much time as dogs. You know, I could be collecting all this information and organizing it. So I'm a concept mapper because I'm a very visual person. That might work for you, it might not. But either whether it's a column list or whether you do a bunch of circles that you link together, that's entirely up to you, but it's best to brainstorm out everything you might use and then go back and reorganize it into what you will use and what is useless. If you already have your research, that will really help feed that experiment. Going through here, if you have data, organize it, be consistent in the way that you phrase your main points. And each main point should be separate from the other. You shouldn't have overlap in between your main points, so make sure that you do have some levels of or degrees of separation, to borrow the social phrase, between the main ideas that you present. Last step for this particular lecture is you want to organize your main points in whatever order is most appropriate for you. And if we go through your textbook, they have a bunch of different potential topic and organization ideas. This is not an exhaustive list. You all will probably do one of the first 3. Generally 1 and 3 are the ones I see the most. A time or chronological order is when your main points are somehow linked by time. Let's think of you trying to tell me how to bake a cake. Step 1 should not be, and put the batter in the oven. Okay, step 1 should be like preparation. Step 2 should be like mixing. And then step 3 is baking, whatever it might be. They're time dependent, so that's chronological. Spatial means distance or space. And so a spatial thing would be if your main points are actually measurably different from each other. Let's say that you're giving a presentation on a vacation in Europe and you're talking to me about the 3 best places to go. You'll probably go, here's this one, 200 miles further is this one, 50 miles away is this one. Topical is by far the most popular. You will most likely use this one. And this means just 3 different topics or categories of information are addressed. So that would be like personality, breed, and cost. Just 3 separate ideas, but they all link to the thesis. Now your textbook will walk you through the rest of these, but I'm already at 25 minutes, so I'm going to go ahead and close this particular screencast. By the end of this particular one, you should have brainstormed your topics. You should have brainstormed your main ideas that might assist with that topic. You should have your thesis and specific purpose already designed. So you should have a good start on where you want to go. I would recommend that you spend some time working on research after this and see if you can find ideas that fit your research. If you don't have ideas that fit your research, change your ideas out. Give yourself a bit of a break before we go into the next chapter, because chapter 12 is the longest lecture of the semester because it deals with structure and design. So give yourself a moment before you get into that one. Email me if you have questions. Have a good day.